and Nompumelelo Ngubeni. Tame Ngubeni talks money, Africa in business, 4 till 5 p.m. 5 till 6. We put on a little bit more color. Vue d'Afrique with Joël Moteba. We go to East and Central Africa and find Darubinia Africa with I Am Shakif. Madapiri gives us some life. Zochitika.
To you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on Channel Radio from an African perspective. I'm Lulu Gaboo. I'm in studio with Noluthando Buthelezi, Fikile Lingwati and Buntle Headbush. Coming up in this hour.
Somalians and other immigrants who came here, we have started that business. It was because we are refugees here. We had no other choice.
Most foreign nationals in South Africa have dug in their heels, saying that returning to their countries of origin is not an option.
Emotional, psychological and political, of course, on my country and on all regions, if we're not, of course, taking into account the other economic effects.
And the conflict between Ukraine and Russia is not just a geopolitical event, it is personal, historical, and deeply unsettling. But first up, the news with Noluthando Buthelezi and our sports headlines with Fikile Lingwati.
SABC News. The African perspective.
Thanks, Lulu, and good afternoon. Mali's military leader, General Assimi Goïta, has been granted a 5-year presidential term for the transitional parliament, which is renewable without elections. The junta leader, who has seized power twice, had promised the return of democracy last year, but it never materialized. The bill granted his new mandate says that the transition would last as many times as necessary and until Mali was pacified. It clears Gen Goïta to lead the country until at least 2030, with many fearing that the move could lead to the repression of the opposition or the dissenting of opinions. Somalia is set to have its first national elections in over 5 decades next year. This as the country rebuilds following years of being ravaged by war that crippled its economy and saw many Somali nationals fleeing the country as refugees. The country celebrated 65 years of independence on the 1st of July and hosted a grand opening of its embassy building in Pretoria, South Africa. Somalia's Foreign Affairs Minister Abdi Salam Abdi Ali.
Despite the persistent challenges posed by Al-Shabaab, the Somali government has made significant strides restoring stability, strengthening security, institution, and fostering national unity. Also, I want to add, after 54 years, Somalia is going elections next year. Elections which is going to be started with local authority, to the members of the parliament, to the national elections. So it's going to be a big journey, and we hope to succeed.
Presiding officers of Parliament say that South Africa's former Deputy President David Mabuza will be remembered for playing a critical role in fostering better coordination between the legislature and the executive. Mabuza died yesterday at the age of 64. National Assembly Speaker Togo Didiza and the chairperson of National Council of Provinces Refilwe Mtsweni Tsipane say that Mabuza was committed to ensuring Parliament's accountability. They say that he also engaged in oversight processes with diligence. Parliament spokesperson Muloto Mutapo.
In his capacity as the chairperson of the Interministerial Committee on Land and Agriculture, he oversaw the implementation of key recommendations made by the Presidential Advisory Panel on Land Reform and Agriculture, which was appointed in 2018. His leadership contributed to the development of crucial policy instruments such as the Land Court Act, which provided for the appointment of full-time judges to adjudicate land-related matters, as well as land beneficiary and allocation policy and the land donation policy.
Senior lecturer at Wits University in South Africa, Dr. Khanetso Sikume, says that hypertension is found to be the biggest cause of stroke. Sikume was speaking during the first day of the Stroke Rehabilitation Research Conference in Johannesburg. According to the Global Burden of Disease study, stroke has emerged as a critical global health challenge, affecting 12.2 million new stroke patients worldwide. Dr. Sikume advises what people can do to avoid the stroke encounter.
Hypertension, which is, like I said, the biggest cause of stroke, is a silent killer. No one knows that they've got hypertension until they get sick and they get into contact with the healthcare worker. So we need to increase the awareness of hypertension. People need to screen. Do not wait for you to be sick to be checked what your BP is. Every 3 months, get your BP checked. Even if it's twice a year, just know your BP value, and that is how we can act fast.
Britain's left-wing MP Zara Sultana has quit the governing Labour Party to co-lead a new party together with former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. She accused Keir Starmer's government of failing to improve people's lives and being what she called an active participant in genocide in Gaza. The BBC's Leila Natu has the details.
Zara Sultana has been a long-standing critic of Keir Starmer's project. She was very quickly suspended from the parliamentary party last summer, just after the election, for voting against the government. So she hasn't been sitting as a Labour MP in Parliament, but she says she's leaving. Intriguingly, Jeremy Corbyn hasn't commented on this, but last night hinted that there was going to be a sort of grouping together of independent MPs who had been elected at the last general election, but didn't give any indication that it was imminent.
For any news stories that you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Nolutando Butelezi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In a sports headline, Bayern Munich winger Serge Gnabry says they are relishing the challenge to face the European champions in the quarterfinals of the Club World Cup. Four-time French Open champion Igor Swiatek fought back to beat world number 208 Katie McNally. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Well, thank you to Nolutando Butelezi with our news update and our sports headlines with Figile Lingwati. It is 12:07 Central African Time and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, on OpenView channel 628 and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app available on the Apple and Google Play stores. And join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 as 406 9126 #Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11 714 4459. And today on #Africa Update Us, South Africans have been labelled xenophobic as they complain about illegal foreign nationals. Do you think this label is correct, or are illegal foreign nationals invading countries, leaving locals without access to basic services? The question is, do you think the label of being xenophobic is correct, or are illegal foreign nationals invading countries, leaving locals without access to basic services? Let us know your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. That's #Africa Update Us.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
Now, as tensions between South Africans and foreign nationals over access to limited resources continue to rise, most foreign nationals have dug in their heels, saying that returning to their countries of origin is not an option. Mohammed Abdullah, who came to South Africa as a refugee, says that going back to Somalia is not part of his plan. Now, this is despite the rebuilding happening in Somalia and the land he says he owns there. Now, speaking to our reporter, Dimakazo Lishoro, he says there might be people intentionally stoking tensions between locals and migrants.
The tension started, on my opinion, is that it has been organized. It was not emanating from a need, existing needs. Because in our study that we have made, informal economy does not only contain the spaza shops. Yes, we as like Somalis and other, immigrants who came here. We have started that businesses. It was because we were refugees here. We had no other choice to do with a small, because we couldn't get a jobs from the government, from the formal sector of the country. It was a matter of survival. So we just come and start that small trade. And that's where we found ourselves. It wasn't a matter of choices. And the fact is that we are not, as has been said, or the speculation says that we are dominating the informal sector of the economy. It's not true, because the informal sector of the economy contains taxes, it contains other services like hairdressing and other cosmetics, and a lot of services is there. But the fact is that we were there. Like as I say, I've been here 23 years. So when I was doing, the only option I had was to make a small business trade. And indeed, if we come together and talk and debate and do evidence-based research, we can address the reality.
What instances where, we've seen recently stories in the media where foreign nationals have actively prevented South Africans from opening a business because they say the area is maybe saturated with spaza shops.
In a business, it's not a business always. It's not something that anyone can control. It is something which is based on competition. And South Africa has got a strong part of the competition because, number one, they have got the necessary document, including the citizenship. They have got facilities of financing. They have got the facility of the banks even can support, the government's also supporting. So the other non-South African nationals who are even maybe like a permanent resident or naturalized, or even those of us who are refugees here, do not have that kind of services. So I think it is all about, it's about rumors that, and prejudicing that, we're saying South African small businesses cannot success because of the presence of the foreign nationals. What we can address is that let us come together on the table, discuss, and see this matter, how we can do together.
That's the view that's held actually by many South Africans, right? That foreign nationals like yourself should go back to your country and rebuild. For example, you've got Somalia now trying to rebuild after years of wars, and you've got these skills that you've acquired. Is that like an option for you, given how many years you've been here?
Number one, let me say the reason I came here was not a choice. It was a forced immigration. And I believe I am also playing a good contribution that, which is the interest of this country. We recently started exporting South African products to Somalia. And I think South Africans were not supposed to say that negatively go back. They're supposed to see us as an opportunity where we can be a facilitator, which can in the near future can prosper. Once Somalia prosper, South Africans will come. They have got a lot of skills. We promote South African education. We promote to Somalia. Somalia is recently going to get oil, obviously, as the minister has been saying now. Crude oil, the country will be very rich. It's the longest coast in Africa, and our population is less than 15 million. So they're supposed to use us as a resource, not that negative. And the other way, I think, who is going to lose when I leave this country? Because my children are now educated here. Some of them are engineers, and I'm also professional. We have skills. We have got also experience. So negatively chasing us, I don't support it. It's not an option. No, I believe Africa is all home. We are in a three category. Those who born here, those who are born here, they only know South Africa. We see South Africa has got a wrong perception about our presence in South Africa. We look like other Africans, and everyone.
How do you think that will change? Because as I say, the problems are very complicated, right?
Yes.
And a lot of it is obviously economic, but also it's just like a sentiment that foreign nationals are literally taking over the country. And locals feel like we've died for this country, so you can't.
There are political motivations which labeling and creating unnecessary fear, which says the country is outnumbered. To my perspective as an academic person, I don't believe that rumor.
That was Mohammed Abdullah, speaking to our reporter, Dimakatso Lishoro. It is 12:15 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. South Africa's anti-migrant group Operation Dudula recently raided hijacked buildings in the city centre of Johannesburg, evicting foreign nationals from the buildings, which are no longer fit for humans to live in. The leader of Operation Dudula, Zandile Dabula, says South Africa cannot be expected to shoulder immigrants who do not have respect for the country's laws. And to speak to us further, we are joined on the line by Advocate Simba Chitando, a human rights lawyer. Advocate Chitando, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Afternoon and greetings to your audience.
Now, what human rights protections are guaranteed to foreign nationals under South African law, and where do the lines blur?
Well, South African law does not distinguish insofar as rights are concerned between a South African citizen and a non-South African citizen. The Bill of Rights applies to all persons. So the rights that a South African citizen or that a permanent resident or even a foreign national, those rights of right to life, right to dignity, those rights apply to all the people that live within the country. What happens, where the distinction then comes into play, is in a situation where some people believe a foreign national is not supposed to be in the country or is illegal because they don't have the permits to be in the country. That does not take away their fundamental human rights in terms of the Bill of Rights.
Now, there have been a number of South Africans who feel their human rights are being overlooked in their own country. And if this is voiced, it is called xenophobia. Now, do South Africans have a right to express their dissatisfaction with what is going on in terms of, for instance, the crisis now that we're looking at in the city centre of Johannesburg, where people are living in dilapidated buildings that are not meant to be used by humans to live in anymore. And they're always talking of the loss of jobs and access to whether medical facilities and so on. It's becoming a daily mantra.
Yes, I think those concerns that you've just raised are valid concerns, and we need to make sure that we deal with each one of them within their particular context. In regards to dilapidated buildings, illegal structures that no one should be occupying, whether they are a foreign national or a South African national, illegal occupation of buildings is an offense. And it is a health risk. It's also a hub for criminal activity. So in a situation like that, the illegal structures ought to be dealt with by the municipal authorities. JMPD and many others need to deal with that within that particular context. In regards to South Africans who feel as though their jobs are, at risk, or they feel like, their human rights. I've heard some saying that their human rights include a right to a job. A job is not a human right. A job is a service. It is a contract of employment between an employer and an employee for particular services or, considering their skills. So in a situation like that, I would not say that that is a human right. What I would say is that every employer seeks the best employee for the particular job in which they would like to be done. In regards to the broader economic outlook, South Africans are employed everywhere within the African continent. As I speak to you right now, I'm actually in Zimbabwe, and I am every time I go to the shops, the South African shops that are everywhere within the country, South African goods being sold in Zimbabwean on Zimbabwean shelves, And nobody in Zimbabwe is saying that we need to remove these South African goods from the shelves because we want Zimbabwean goods instead. We are a interconnected region, and we have to respect that. That South Africa gets a lot of business, and South Africa's economic outlook and growth is dependent on the business of the continent. So it is, I would say, to those South Africans that feel as though their opportunities have been curtailed, I would ask them to broaden their minds and look at ways in which they can take part in a much broader and bigger African economy that is interconnected, and find ways to, form part of the value chain and not be a hindrance to it.
Now, in April, a South African citizen was presumably denied access to medical treatment in Zimbabwe. This is after they fell ill during a work assignment in Bulawayo, and they had to be sent back to South Africa for medical treatment. Now, just the uproar that came with that from many South Africans who were very upset by this, and it would seem that human rights organizations did not voice their concerns, which now raises the questions of whether these organizations take recognition of the citizens of the country. And also, I think not much information was given or shared with regards to, the medical treatment that this South African citizen required, and what reasoning was behind them being sent back to South Africa for medical treatment.
Yes, in that particular case, I was following it because at the time when it happened, I was actually involved in litigation for a Zimbabwean lady who was denied, her child was denied medical services in South Africa. That particular case was a situation where the South African national in question was not necessarily denied access to healthcare. The healthcare that the South African national needed could not be provided in Zimbabwe because Zimbabwe's medical infrastructure is not what it ought to be. It is in a very bad state. On this past Tuesday, rather, the president of Zimbabwe addressed the Politburo in the country and said, look, our healthcare is in a mess. And it is well known, it's well documented, it is all over the press, in not just in Zimbabwe, but in South Africa. Everybody's talking about it. We all know that the healthcare system in Zimbabwe is not what it should be. Steps are being made to correct it. That's not my field. But what I do know is that the South African national left to get better healthcare, was not denied healthcare, but left to get better healthcare. It was not a human rights violation. In fact, it was a situation where the Zimbabwean medical practitioners said, look, we have done as much as we can. You need to go to South Africa for better healthcare. That is a very different situation from what's happening in South Africa, where Operation Dudula, a vigilante group, or at best, I've called them terrorists who actually, physically take the law into their hands and stop people from going into hospitals, foreign nationals going into hospitals, and that is a crime. They've got no right to do so, and it's a completely different situation.
Now, Advocate Chitando, when it comes to, human rights laws, whether it's South Africa or the African continent or just globally, when it comes to medical facilities, for instance, how does it generally work? Do countries of origin of, foreign nationals or immigrants in any country, do they have to take responsibility or some sort of responsibility for medical, costs of their foreign nationals in whatever country, whether South Africa, Botswana, or Zimbabwe? Where does the government of each country step in when it comes to paying for services? Because in some countries it is done, where a country will know that, listen, Egypt, you owe South Africa a certain amount. How do we get that money back? Because I think this is where the disconnect then happens. Because when people go to facilities, medical facilities, you find that some facilities have run out of resources or clinics. And how does it generally work?
Okay, that's a very good question, and again, many people need to put it into the particular context of it. There is a distinction between public health care and private health care. But I would like to focus in on the South African situation because this is what we're dealing with at the moment in this discussion, at least. So in South Africa, the foreign nationals many of them, the vast majority of them, are paying tax directly or indirectly. Indirectly, sales tax. Whenever they go to the shops, they're paying tax when they buy fuel at the pump, and that revenue goes to the fiscus, and that's where the public health care gets its resources. So the argument that foreign nationals are not paying for the medical public medical facilities is incorrect. They are. They are paying alongside South African citizens and anyone in the country when they, just by going about their day-to-day lives and paying their taxes. In the case of those who are employed, money gets taken off their salaries. It goes to the taxes. So we know that there's some contribution there. But even on top of that, when you go to public healthcare hospitals, there is a tariff. Many people have posted it online on social media that where people are paying. They are paying for various things. In private, the question is very simple. Everyone pays. As you walk into a private hospital for whatever service. Then on top of all of that, there is an oath, and that oath, I've forgotten the exact term, but all the doctors and the medical practitioners listening to this will understand what it is. An oath that doctors, nurses, medical practitioners, universally, a duty to help and save life. And there's a lot of litigation about it. I'm a lawyer, and what the current standard is that you do the best you can to preserve life. And that is an obligation, a legal obligation on doctors and on hospitals. So I would inform the public that, look, the foreign nationals are going to pay for medical services. They're not getting it for free. They are prepared to pay. And in many of the cases that I've dealt with, the foreign nationals are trying to get into the hospital. They've got money to pay for the services, but they're being denied entry by vigilante groups that just don't like them. And I think, in my own view, it is a distraction because many of the people that are in Operation Dudula and others who are manning the hospitals, stopping people from going in, they're not sick. They are perfectly healthy. They're unemployed. They're standing outside the hospital because they've got nothing else to do. They've got nowhere else to be. And they believe by acting this way, it makes them feel better. It makes them feel as though they're making a contribution, but they're not really. In the case of my client, the one I mentioned, they've now made arrangements to go get medical attention in India, and they're going to pay for it. And that is going to be to the benefit of India. Medical tourism is a multi-billion-dollar business, and South Africa stands poised to benefit from it. But they're chasing away the customers. And remember, patients are customers. They're patients, but they're paying. And that is essential to keep doctors employed. Just a week ago, I think it was the Minister of Health, Dr. Motsoaledi, and the President of South Africa were talking about how it's difficult to get South African doctors trained because there's no resources to pay them. Well, look, we've got foreign nationals coming, not just in South Africa, but from abroad, coming in, saying that we want to get medical attention in South Africa, but you want to chase them away. You're chasing away customers.
Advocate, just very quickly in wrapping up, we have run out of time. What about the foreign nationals who are in the country but do not have the money to pay? How does it work then?
Oh, in a situation like that, it's a human rights issue. I believe if they don't have the money to pay for the public purse should accommodate them because they have a human right to that. It's a law. It's one of the laws of South Africa. But they are paying through the taxes, at the sales tax. They're making contributions to the country.
Right. Advocate, it's always a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update. That's Advocate Simba Chitando, a human rights lawyer, joining us on the line. It is 12:30 Central African Time, and our news headlines up next with Noluthando Buthelezi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Mali's military leader, General Assimi Goïta, has been granted a 5-year presidential term by the transitional parliament, which is renewable without elections. The junta leader, who has seized power twice, had promised the return of democracy last year, but it never materialized. Presiding officers of Parliament say that South Africa's former Deputy President David Mabuza will be remembered for playing a critical role in fostering better coordination between the legislature and the executive. And the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has denounced Russia after the biggest bombardment in the war with Ukraine so far. I'll have more details at the top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Well, thank you to Noluthando Buthelezi with our headlines. And we'll say good afternoon to Figile Ngwati with our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good afternoon, Lulu. We begin with football news. Bayern Munich winger Serge Gnabry says they are relishing the challenge to face one of the most informed teams right now when they take on European champions PSG in the quarterfinals of the FIFA Club World Cup. The French Ligue 1 outfit dismantled Inter Miami 4-0 to progress to the last 8, while Bayern also scored the same number of goals in their 4-2 victory against Flamengo earlier this week. Gnabry complimented the side led by Luis Enrique, but believes they can match them for quality in Atlanta, Georgia on Saturday.
Obviously, it will be a difficult match. Paris has an incredible run. They won the Champions League, so they will have a lot of confidence. But we don't back down. I think we are a very great team. We've played good so far in this tournament, so I think it will be for everyone a very exciting match.
PSG will have the odds on their side coming into the match, and this Gnabry acknowledges. The former Arsenal player is confident if they follow Vincent Kompany's instructions, they can see the game out.
I think we just play our game. I think they know also what's coming their way. It's not going to be easy, but if we just manage to play like we used to play, I think they will also have it difficult. For sure, I would say the favourites because they won the Champions League, but it's a new match, a new opportunity, so we will be ready.
Now, tennis news: a 7-time champion Novak Djokovic outlasted Dan Evans in what could be the British veteran's final appearance at Wimbledon. Evans, now ranked 154th in the world and given a wild card to play at the All England Club, lost 6-3, 6-2 and 6-love in their second match. Serb great Djokovic produced a serving masterclass, which even left Evans shaking his head in disbelief at several points. Now, Djokovic is also trying to finally land a standalone record 25th major, having not claimed one of the sport's most prestigious prizes since the 2023 US Open.
That was necessary. Obviously, I knew that. I was preparing well for the match. I think technically, tactically, I knew exactly what I needed to do, and I executed it perfectly. Sometimes you have these kind of days, but yeah, you know, you have these kind of days where everything goes your way, everything flows, and you know, it's good to be in the shoes and holding a racket on a day like this. No question about it.
Well, For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel Africa.
Ok.
Adivinha só, a Channel Africa quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel Africa está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update. Only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Well, thank you to Figile Lingwati with our sports update, and we say good afternoon to Buntle Hedbush with our business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Lulu, and a very good afternoon to our listeners. In our first look at the business news this afternoon, Ethiopia has signed a $1 billion financing agreement with the World Bank to support its economic reform program and boost growth. The country's finance ministry says the financing will take the form of a concessional loan and grant. This comes as the International Monetary Fund's board approved the latest review of the East African country's $3.4 billion loan program this week, unlocking access to another $262.3 million tranche. Angola hiked the diesel price by 1/3 from today as part of the government's drive to curb costly subsidies and shore up public finances. The African oil-producing country has been gradually removing fuel subsidies since 2023, encouraged by the International Monetary Fund. Its economy is under pressure because of a slide in the global crude oil price earlier this year, and it faces external debt repayments of about $9 billion in 2025, including a Eurobond that's maturing in November. 3 people alleged to be part of a syndicate involved in printing and distributing counterfeit money will be back in South Africa's Pretoria Magistrates Court on Thursday next week. The accused, who are Cameroonian nationals, appeared in court yesterday. During their arrest in Alades Park in Pretoria on Tuesday, they were found in possession of machines used to print counterfeit South African rand and US dollars. The National Prosecuting Authority's Lumka Mahanjana says one of the accused tried to bribe police with 2,000 rand in exchange for their release.
Police were patrolling and found one of the accused persons in possession of the printing machine, who then took them to a guest house where the other 2 were busy operating a similar printing machine and printing counterfeit money. During their brief appearance in court, the matter was postponed to the 10th of July for bail investigations.
The National Consumer Commission of South Africa says it has noted with concern that a number of independently owned supermarkets are still not adhering to the Consumer Protection Act. This after the Commission conducted a series of inspections in rural and peri-urban areas and uncovered serious violations that threaten consumer safety and market integrity. The violations include selling expired food and failing to label products correctly. Prudence Moilwa is the NCC's head of complaints and investigations.
It does look like the management of the supermarkets are not necessarily clearing the stock in order to ensure that things that have expired, things that are not good for consumption are kept off the shop floors. And this may result in what we have seen in the past, wherein consumers suffer foodborne illnesses and also are exposed to the kind of food that is not fit for human consumption.
Moving further afield, sales of foreign-branded mobile phones in China, including those of Apple, fell 9.7% year-on-year in May. China's smartphone-dominated market. Apple's performance plays a significant role in the overall data on foreign-branded phone sales in the country. And now for a look at our indicators, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 529. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 10. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 415. And in Zambia, it's 24 kwacha 5. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 rial 42. Russia, 78 rubles 94. India, 85 rupees 43. China 7 yuan 16, and South Africa $1 is trading at 17 rand 16 cents. $1 is trading at 73 pence to the British pound and 84 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,339 and platinum at $1,386 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $68.71 a barrel. And those are your business news at this hour. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa Update, your daily dose of African insights with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Well, thank you to Buntle Headbush with our business update. It is 12:42 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Now, today, Rwanda marks 30 years since the end of the genocide. On this day in 1994, the Rwandan Patriotic Front secured the capital of Kigali and ended the 100 days of genocide against the Tutsi nation. And to take us down memory lane, we are joined on the line by our correspondent in Rwanda, Silvanus Karamera. Silvanus, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you too. Good afternoon to you, Lolo.
Now, what's the feeling among the Rwandan people today?
Yeah, thank you, Lulu. I mean, the feeling is very proud. Every Rwandan is very proud for what the country has just been achieving for the last 31 years after the RPF, back then rebel group led by President Paul Kagame, stopped the genocide, just like you said in your introduction. Today is when the capital Kigali was secured by the rebels and to some point put to an end the genocide which had been committed by the Interahamwe militia again the Tutsi, and finally fled to neighboring countries, including the eastern part of the DRC. So today, people, there was no, of course, national celebrations, because the big national celebration is always held after every 5 years. So today, what happened? People, like for example, the previous night in different corners of Kigali and even the regional capitals, people are celebrating, in different occasions, singing liberations song, reflecting on what happened 31 years ago. But the general mood is, you can read from people's faces. People are very, pleased about what the country has achieved in terms of safety, security, economic growth, unity reconciliation. It's like what is being, seen in Rwanda today is unprecedented when you look at the historical trace of the country. So I would tell you that, of course, it is a holiday, public holiday. You don't see a huge movement across the big roads here. But since morning, especially from 9 a.m. to around noon, people have been gathered in different locations, especially on grassroots levels, discussing, being given some historical background on what happened back then. So you could feel the mood around the country, of course, without celebrations, as I said, but you can see it even from the social media posts from different people. You can see radio and TV playing the liberation songs. You can see a very jubilant mood, jubilation mood among us people here.
Silvanus, just give us a background of why celebrations don't take place on an annual basis, but every 5 years.
I don't know. I think it's all about every year we have these celebrations, but what I was trying to refer to was now the the general feeling of the country where people gather, especially at the national stadium, and celebrate with matches, with games and so on and so forth. It's like they have now given the focus of the event to the development and what the country has just been achieving. Because I can give an example. For the last 2 weeks, the Rwandan soldiers, Rwandan Defense Forces, in collaboration with the other members of armies of the East African community, have been moving around, giving social assistance to people, including building some schools, giving free medical care to people, especially vulnerable people. So it's all about how they just decide. I don't think there's any special attachment to it. It's like giving a half of the decade the weight it deserves, rather than having it annually, which to some people think it may even reduce its weight, and so to say.
And in terms of just the historical background that the world knows of, is this also being, taught to young children, young pupils, the new generation, the younger generation?
That's it, actually. You are very right, Lulu. Because, for example, the last 2 weeks has been characterized by even a very huge and group of people, especially young people, who are coming from both in Rwanda and the Rwandan diaspora, converging together in one room, so to say.
All right, we seem to have lost that connection to correspondent in Rwanda, Silvanos Karamera. Oh, Silvanos, you're back with us.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead. You were telling us about young people from not only Rwanda, but just the diaspora.
Yeah, thank you, Lulu. I don't know what just happened with the network, but what I was trying to emphasize here is it looks like the focus is being given to the youthful people here to teach them the history of the country, right from the colonial times to where we are today. And in this case, you see the history has been divided into two different portions. One is about the historical facts, just like I said, where the youthful people here are being taught how Rwandans were just one people. Before the colonial people came, colonialists came in here and divided the people in the lines of ethnicity and so on and so forth, and how even they planted this, seed of ethnicity and hatred, which led to, committed, genocide, which was committed against the Tutsi in 1994. And from then, how the government has been building up the economic growth and so on and so forth, but plus building the foundation on unity and reconciliation. And it's worth reminding people here that over 70% of Rwandan people, demographically are youth, which to some extent are less than, most of whom are less than 30 years. In this case, you can see most of them are not informed about what happened. So it's like this period of time has been dedicated to teaching these young people, through videos, through those people who are around, and even some of the soldiers who fought, this war to liberate this country. So it has been some ongoing activities in terms of discussions and reflecting back what took place 31 years ago, so to say.
Well, Silvanos, thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update. We'll leave it there for today. That's our correspondent in Rwanda, Silvanos Karamera, joining us on the line.
Africa Update, your daily dose of African insights with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Now, as the conflict between Ukraine and Russia grinds into its third year, its shockwaves continue to reverberate across Eastern Europe. Now, for journalists and civil society leaders in neighboring countries, the conflict is not just a geopolitical event, it is personal, historical, and deeply unsettling. From Lithuania to Georgia and Romania, voices from the region are speaking out, warning the world that Ukraine's fight is more than a national struggle. It's a battle for the future of Europe itself. Our Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe spoke to some European journalists and civil society who were part of the just concluded 2-week seminar on misinformation and disinformation in the digital age held in Germany.
In a recent one-hour telephonic conversation, Russian President Vladimir Putin has told his United States counterpart, Donald Trump, that Moscow will not give up on its goal of eliminating the root causes of the war in Ukraine, while expressing his readiness to seek a political and negotiated solution to the conflict. But the conflict has affected neighboring countries, prompting a humanitarian situation that has devastating effects. Our special report takes us across the region, where fear, memory, and solidarity converge in powerful ways. We begin in Lithuania, where journalist Vitas Broveres sees the war through a raw and historical lens.
This is a very brutal, very cruel war of conquest. You can say it's colonial war, and for South African public it should be very understandable. Colonial war. The former metropolis of colony not only wants to take the colony back, but to obliterate it, to destroy it as a country, as a society. And so it's a war for Ukraine. It's a war of survival. It's a very cruel war. It's a very brutal one. So, of course, you are taking it very deeply as a human being.
Brover says the conflict has deeper consequences to the people in the region.
That is the main effect, emotional, psychological, and political, of course, on my country and on all regions. If we're not, of course, taking into account the other economic effects, flows of millions of refugees from Ukraine and it's destruction, it's war, it's destruction. So you might imagine that there are all negative economic, social, and demographical effects. I'm not talking even about Ukraine, who is now now bleeding to death.
Additionally, he's concerned that if Russia is not confronted militarily on Ukraine, it will expand its mission of occupation.
Very concerned about our security, concerned about that if Russia is not stopped physically in Ukraine, and that Baltic countries, surrounding regions might be next, and we are building very much up on our defense, preparing. There is a huge discussions in the society about security, about defense, and of course think about the main task, how to help Ukraine more.
He passionately recalls covering Ukraine conflict since 2013, when the first protest erupted against the pro-Russian regime.
I started covering Ukraine extensively and from the ground, from the very beginning of this truly global geopolitical historical process in 2013, when the popular uprising started in Ukraine against the pro-Russian regime, which was controlled by Russians. And then, of course, after an annexation of Crimea, when the war in the covert war in the eastern Ukraine started, I started covering. And of course, after this full-scale invasion, it's just a very big part of my professional and personal life.
In Georgia, the memories of Russian aggression are not only vivid, they are ongoing. Journalist Tama Sheveniradze remembers 2008 when Russian troops crossed into Georgia.
We are affected because we really see, we've been affected before in 2008 when Russians attacked Georgia. We've been affected in 1990s when it attacked and basically, occupied 20% of our country's territories. Somehow we know Russia. We have no doubts about its aggressive plans.
For Georgians, Ukraine's war is chillingly familiar and deeply symbolic. Sheveniradze has commended Ukrainian soldiers' bravery.
The war in Ukraine, which is initiated by Russia, is of course touching us in a way, and is of course we feel that it might not stop there. Not only that we feel compassion, and at the same time somehow we're thrilled by the bravery of Ukrainian soldiers, we also feel that Ukraine is basically fighting not only its peace as a country, but also fighting for the peace of Georgia and other European countries.
And in Romania, the war hit close literally, as Romania shares one of the longest borders with Ukraine, causing a humanitarian crisis. When the invasion began, fear swept the country. Alexander Cantor leads Friends for Friends Foundation, a non-governmental organization in Romania.
Very much affected because we border Ukraine. One of our biggest borders is the one with Ukraine. So we were very affected because, first of all, I think we were in shock when the invasion began. We were all thinking if we are going to be the next targets of Russia. Honestly, we are still thinking if we are going to be the next targets of Russia 3 years later. This has brought a lot of fear and anxiety in the Romanian society. We welcomed Ukrainian refugees, and there was so much solidarity because we understand what Russia means and the influence it can have and how it barely stops when it does not get what it wants.
As the conflict rages on, Cantor appreciates Ukraine's efforts of protecting its neighbors.
I don't think this war is over, and I truly appreciate Ukraine for keeping us all safe in Europe, actually, and this is the truth. There are a few countries in Europe who really understand Russia. Unfortunately, we in the Eastern Bloc are some of the countries who really understand how they operate.
From Vilnius to Tbilisi to Bucharest, the message is the same. Ukraine is not fighting alone. These voices from Eastern Europe reminds us that this war is not just about borders. It's about survival, sovereignty, and the soul of Europe. Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Gummersbach, Germany.
As the conflict between Ukraine and Russia grinds into its third year, we go to a big story in South Africa. This is where the former deputy president of the country, David Mabuza, having passed away yesterday at a Johannesburg hospital at the age of 64, with tributes continuing to stream in. President Cyril Ramaphosa has expressed his deep sadness at his passing, and his deputy Paul Mashatile was visiting the Mabuza family home in Johannesburg to pass their condolences today. Ndebo Mukobo has more.
We must all start from the standpoint that people are born with an inherent dignity.
The cat, as he was affectionately known to some of his comrades, is no more. President Cyril Ramaphosa said he's saddened by his passing. Presidential spokesperson is Vincent Makwenya.
President Ramaphosa is saddened today by the loss of a leader who was grounded in activism at the early stages of his political career, and who came to lead our nation and shape South Africa's engagements with our continental compatriots and the international community in his role as deputy president.
And that report by Ndebo Mukobo. And we say happy Friday and good afternoon to Dabukhole Khuleni. How are you today?
Happy Friday to you too. I am fantastic. Chilly outside, very windy, cold. But step into the Channel Africa studios. It's nice and toasty, fabulous. Warm.
Yes, I know.
Fantastic. I know. It's a musical Friday this afternoon. On the upside, one of the conversations we'll be having is paying a tribute to Mama Abigail Kubeka, who will be honored for a one-night-only concert at the State Theatre tonight. On the 5th of July. It's a star-studded Fantuka Af tribute concert. Tonight we'll be talking about it, and for those who haven't bought their tickets yet, to go get them immediately. And then we are joined on the line this afternoon by Notehead. He's a producer and a South African DJ. He'll be our DJ for our DJ mix this afternoon on the upside. And then we have a conversation with Banda Banda, celebrated South African musician, producer, and creative entrepreneur. So like I said, it's a musical Friday. On the upside, we'll be keeping you nice and toasty warm this afternoon.
I saw Mam Abigail Kubeka on one of our television stations, and she was talking. They were talking about this concert. That one day only, and how the arts and culture minister, sports arts and culture minister, promised 2 million to her, and this is part of that work in progress to get to that 2 million rands that she was promised. And I remember she said very gracefully, because
you know what's going to happen as soon as your family knows.
Yes, and everybody will be knocking. She looked very graceful, very beautiful, classy as always.
I can't wait to hear about this concert and what people can expect. It's a one night only. I would have loved for it to be the whole weekend for those who work on the Friday and would love to see it. But it's amazing to see that the department is giving back to the legends while they're still alive, celebrating them while they're still alive, which is amazing.
Something definitely to look forward to at the top of the hour on The Upside with Dabucho and Matsuho. For myself, Lulu Gaboo, and the Africa Update team, it's been a great Friday, and enjoy your weekend. It's extra cold this weekend, I think, and just do keep warm and continue with us on our social media platforms. From the team, our producer Tracy Bumgard, technical operator Bongi Moyo, and social media Elaine Bengani. It's been a good one. Let's do this again on Monday. Bye-bye.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
With the news at 1 o'clock, good afternoon. I am Nolutando Butelezi. Mali's military leader, General Assimi Goïta,